So I've got the engine braced up, and I wanted to give you a quick overview of how I did that. So generally, your standard longitudinal engine braces, which will go on the fenders or the strut towers. Basically, with the aluminum, you don't want to put the weight on there. There's not enough bracing on the inside of the fender. So you want to support it by the strut towers, but because the engine's so far forward, you can really only pick up the rear support mount if you do just the standard, single brace. All right, so I bought this engine brace that's meant for transverse engines, and then I triangulated it between the strut towers, and I've got this front one on the snub mount bracket. So that supports the two engine lift locations. And I added this second support. It's not doing any weight bearing, really. It's just to control the tilt. And I have it on the lock carrier there. This one lined up pretty good with the hook. The front side, I just couldn't get enough angle on it and have this high enough. The cross arm wasn't long enough. So I just put a anchor here and a chain. All right, now engine is supported and I can start working on pulling the trans and dropping the subframe. I got to do engine mounts. You got to drop the subframe, or at least you don't have to fully drop it, but you have to drop it a little bit to get access to some of the trans stuff. So another fun thing about having a lower height lift is all of the standard stands and high lift trans jacks don't work because their minimum heights are pretty much the whole lift height of my car. So I need to be able to get the trans dropped down below that. So normally this is how the base of the trans jack is. Cut it off here. This is where the actual jacks connects to. So cut that all off. Then I'll weld the base, the wheels directly to this plate here. And that'll save me about 16 inches of lift height, which should be just enough to get the trans out from underneath the car. All right, brake pedal time. So this is just was the stock automatic pedal cover. Used to fit on there like that. As you can see, way too much spacing, way too close. So cut the old one off. Had the wide metal pad. So I took this new cover. So this is just off of a B5, B6, C5. Came on a bunch of things. New pedal pad. It's like $20. Lined it up and then marked it and then just cut it. Warm up this pedal cover. It makes it easier to stretch. Use a heat gun or something. I will put in a picture of my little template. But there you go. Looks factory. All right, Monday update. Exhaust is off. Cats are out. Couple tips. It is easiest to come at the cats, or at least the header connections from about the cats with a ginormous extension. 36-inch from Harbor Freight, I think. They come in like a 3-pack with a really big 3/8 and then a couple long 1/4-inch drives, which are handy too. Driver side, at least USA, driver side, left-hand side. Cat, the primary O2 has to come out for you to be able to slide this connection past the transmission when you get it off. I disconnected the header connection and then removed the O2 from the wheel well. But if you can get to the O2 from the top before you even mess with anything else, that's probably the easiest. On the passenger side, the right side, there's enough room to twist the pipe and get it by. And secondary O2s, those can stay on. Hey, welcome back, Hot Cylinders Garage. This is Wednesday? I don't know. I've lost track of time. It's probably not going to be Wednesday when you watch this. Anyways, CVs, axles, and drive shaft are out. On the driver's side, this side was pretty easy to get out. Let me see if I can. So if you don't want to have to undo all the suspension and stuff to pull the CV out, on the either side, there's a heat shield around the top. You probably want to, if you get that out, then you can slide the axle up, and then that gives you enough room to slide it out of the hub. I should have done that on the passenger side, but I didn't. As you can see, I just loosened the bottom of the strut was getting in the way, so this gave me enough angle to slide the CV up that way and then pull it out. I did have one stubborn little bolt on the diff end. It stripped the Allen. I had to cut it off. Still didn't want to come off with like vice grips or anything. So I actually had to thread it, and then had to use the 3-nut method, because if the 2-nut method doesn't work, try 3. And got the drive shafts here. So you can tell the one on top, so that's the new one. And it's the rear half, same length. Put the carrier bearing in the same spot. But since the O&E is shorter, you got to extend the front. Here's a couple. So D2 axle, C4 axle. See how much longer it is, and then one of these sides is actually going to need yet another 1-inch spacer. So the O&E is way narrower than the auto. And then if you look down on here, I'm not sure if you can tell the difference between the diameter of the tone ring for the ABS sensor. D2 is larger. Now, a few people have put the C4 axles in, not done anything to the wheel speed sensor, and found out that it screws up your stability control, ABS. That all freaks out. It can make the car drive really sketchy. People have gotten into accidents because they didn't have ABS working. So there's kind of two options. You can, probably the easiest option is to use the C4 end. Oh, sorry. Camera's going crazy. And so over here on the wheel speed sensor, so if you can see that, there's a little spacer underneath the sensor. So if you remove that spacer, all right, so right underneath, plastic spacer, you remove that, that's going to bring the wheel speed sensor closer. But you got to be careful. It might then be too close for the C4, so you might have to shim it with a few washers. So you'll just have to be careful for that. The better option, because assuming that you didn't buy new axles anyways, you probably want to have nice strong OE axles and not have some weak remans. So assume that you're buying used C4 OEM axles, then you want to rebuild those anyways. So you can just put the D2 end onto the C4 axle. The splines all match up. So that's the route I'm going to be going. Well, that's today's update. I will keep working. All right, Friday. Didn't get too much done the last couple days. Quick tip. So I got the engine supported from the top, but that quite wasn't enough to rotate the engine far enough to get the motor mount out. So, one more support stand that I could use to screw up the front. So that allowed me, to get to the starter and disconnect all the engine and everything, you have to support the engine and pull the motor mounts. So got the bracket off and enough to twist it, which would then allow me to get to that nut or the bolt there that attached to the engine mount and separate the two, so then I can pull both of the two out. There's not enough space for them to both come out as one piece. So there's one side. I think passenger side should be a little easier. Yeah. Because you don't have the oil filter, oil cooler assembly in the way with the starter on the other side. So that side should be a lot easier. All right, starter is out. Both engine mount brackets. So when you get the starter out, you need to then get the torque converter, 3 bolts. So spin it with the crank, 25 millimeter 12-point socket on there. And then when you line it up, you should see the screw there. Hopefully you can see that. It's a T55 Torx. So there's 3 of those. Take one out and then rotate the engine, take out another. So a quick update, just wanted to show a little side-by-side comparison of new versus old engine mounts. So you see there's probably a 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch difference in height just as they compress. So I was getting some rocking of the engine, as I transition on and off throttle. Could be engine mounts and trans mounts. All right, little tip here. So the Bentley here says, remove left transmission support, complete with transmission mount. Support is not separated from the mount. But, come over here. And you can see that the thread sticking through the support from the mount is blocking you from being able to remove that lower Allen there. So I'm carefully lifting up the transmission and removing the mounts. Supporting it with a stand. See the trans jack just yet. So once I get the support arms off, then I'll move in the trans jack. All right, got the trans jack positioned. So now, according to the Bentley, we need to undo the rear of the subframe. You don't have to do the whole thing. You undo the rear and then you can drop it up to 4 inches. So not sure if this is necessary, but just to make sure that your subframe doesn't shift. Since I'm not undoing the front, don't think it should, but better safe than sorry. What I've kind of done around each of these bolts, so the 3 smaller ones and then the big one, just take a Sharpie, circle around the washer, do that on both sides. So then when you go to put it back together, you can tell if your subframe is shifted, which will screw up your alignment. So another reason why it might be advantageous to separate the trans mount from the actual trans support arm is there's this brace that goes across the subframe, and it connects right near where the trans mounts connect to the subframe. And there's supposed to be nuts, capture nuts, welded to the subframe. 2 of mine were, 2 of them weren't. And so you go to take them off and then just spin. And the trans mount sits right in there with that nut, kind of like that, but then the subframe comes up and blocks it. So you can't really get to that nut to hold it from the top side to undo it with the trans mount in there. So I had to support the trans, pull off the trans mount, separate these, and then I could get to this from the top. We'll see how I'm going to repair this. If I want to try and weld it back in there, or see, maybe I'll do like a riv nut or something, see if that holds. We'll see. I'll let you know. Drum roll. Very good with one hand. She's out. Holy crap. That is a massive transmission and heavy. Thankfully, my welds held up on the trans jack where I shortened it. But yeah, giant, not so giant. Once I get that off of the high lift stand, I'll throw it on the ground next to the O&E. Show you how big of a difference those things are. But yeah, so dropping the subframe, the rear of the subframe worked, but holy crap, that was a tight squeeze. Basically, the whole reason why you have to drop the subframe is because it's wider than the hole underneath the subframe. So you literally have to drop the subframe down so then you can slide, the transmission and the width at the axles between the subframe and the body. So it's a little sketchy, but got it out. So halfway point.